Now, I've seen a lot of people talking about Jason Voorhees coming to Dead by Daylight. Today, I want to burst that bubble just a little bit. And this is nothing against any specific creator because I love the idea of this. And while there may be some things that are pointing towards a Dead by Daylight release, I believe there's one crucial piece of the puzzle that's missing that nobody's really talking about. And that's what I want to cover today. Of course, if you like what I do, consider subscribing, hit your notifications so you never miss one from me. It is totally free to subscribe to the channel and really helps me out. Big thanks to you guys. Let's go and get into it. Now, let's talk about why people believe Jason is coming to Dead by Daylight. And to look forward, we have to look back just a little bit. If you're not familiar, Jason has been, and Jason Friday the 13th, has been in this purgatory of sorts over the past, 10 years or so. So, a lawsuit between Victor Miller and Sean S. Cunningham has stifled any progress with Jason Voorhees, any game, any movie. We've seen that firsthand with Friday the 13th game being outright just abandoned. Now, the result is that Victor Miller now owns the name Friday the 13th, and he owns everything attached to that first movie, while Horror Inc. owns Jason Voorhees. So going forward, if neither party is willing to work together, Horror Inc. could use Jason's likeness because they own it, but they cannot call the movie Friday the 13th. And of course, if Victor Miller were to make something, he could call the movie Friday the 13th, but he can't use Jason. With that in mind, Horror Inc. has openly said that they're trying to create this, Jason universe essentially. So, media, movies, video games, they're going to be releasing him into all of these different things. And they've already had a Jason Voorhees come into Warner Brothers multiverse game. There's even talks of Jason coming to Fortnite and maybe even Call of Duty. Who knows? Fortnite adds a lot of licensed characters and they do a lot of work with, actors and musicians and all that kind of stuff too. So I could definitely see that happening. Now, we also have a little piece of evidence that happened when a small independent guy essentially wanted to create an update for Friday the 13th, the game. I mean, they were bringing, and when I say they, it's either a super small studio or a single person was working on this update. I think it was just a super small team of guys. But basically, they were going to be bringing in, new skins that were never released to the game, new maps, all kinds of stuff to make that fresh. And they were going to be running their own servers, which sounded incredible, but that got shut down by Horror Inc. very quickly. Now, the reason I think that's a clue is because Horror Inc. has stated that we're bringing out Jason Voorhees into the wild again, and so we're not going to let somebody else kind of capitalize on what we plan on doing. Now, of course, these guys weren't going to charge anything for Jason Voorhees and Friday the 13th, the game update, but that's neither here nor there. And all of this points to Dead by Daylight, who has been able to secure so many licenses for all of our favorite slashers and killers. They literally have not only a great business model when it comes to the amount of killers that they have introduced into the game, but they have the license for pretty much every major masked slasher or villain or entity or whatever that you could possibly want in a single video game, except for Jason Voorhees. So it would make sense that they would bring him into his game, except for two really big things. The first one being that Horror Inc. does not own the rights to the original movie. Now you may be thinking, well, that one doesn't have Jason Voorhees. And you're right, but Jason Voorhees and Camp Crystal Lake go together like peanut butter and jelly. Without those two, would Dead by Daylight really bring this chapter together without those two? It's really hard to do anything without Camp Crystal Lake. Now, you can get by without talking about his mom, of course, which is a part of the first movie as well. But like I said, Camp Crystal Lake, there's really, I see no other way of bringing him in unless you want to talk about some of the locations in the other films, like, bringing him to New York City or Manhattan. That's something you could do. And of course, you could not call it Camp Crystal Lake. You could call it something else and it, just be a place in the woods that happen to have cabins and stuff like that. But like I said, just Camp Crystal Lake and Jason Voorhees, they go together so well. I don't see anybody bringing them to the table or one without the other. Victor Miller is the owner of the screenplay of that first film. He was actually the original writer to that first film. And that's why we lost Jason Voorhees for so long. And it just felt like he was never coming back because they were tied up in court between Sean S. Cunningham and Horror Inc. and Victor Miller. I don't know that Dead by Daylight would create an entire chapter or whatever around Jason Voorhees without Camp Crystal Lake. I haven't heard of Victor Miller actually coming into the picture and cooperating with that whole idea there. So, would that actually work? I have no idea. Again, if they just brought in Jason Voorhees, that's going to sell people. And if they happen to bring it into, a campground that's not called Camp Crystal Lake, but it's still that same kind of setting, well, they could probably get away with that. But the other part of this is Harry Manfredini and what he said last year. He said that they are absolutely working on a new horror game involving Jason and Friday the 13th. And it's an asymmetrical horror game. So, why would you bring your star, who has been in purgatory basically for almost the last decade, into a competitor space and allow people to play as him as well, right? It's like if Texas Chainsaw were to now allow Dead by Daylight to use the rights to Bubba. Like, I don't think they would do that. Now, of course, that's Toby Hooper that actually owns that and Kim Heinkel. But regardless, I don't think they would relinquish those rights to behavior, allowing him to come into the Dead by Daylight universe now after we have a full release for Texas Chainsaw. I think Victor Miller and his cooperation would be the biggest holdup because, again, we want Jason Voorhees and Camp Crystal Lake to go together. But I also believe in Harry Manfredini. He has no reason to lie or make any of this stuff up. And I believe they're going to be coming out with a new game that, of course, is going to be competition to Dead by Daylight. And they don't want to ruin that. If you bring him into Multiverse or Fortnite, that's not going to affect you. That's going to get him out there and that's going to let people know, oh man, Jason Voorhees is back. And that's going to be the hype machine that they use along with films and stuff like that in order to get him back to video games where he belongs and hopefully will stay in the asymmetrical horror gaming world. But of course, I'd love to hear your opinion. Do you think Jason will be coming to Dead by Daylight? Let me know what you think down below. Again, if you like what I do, consider subscribing. Hit your notifications so you never miss one from me. Big thanks to you guys. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.